Okay, we are in ninth literature, and this is Tuesday, and I've just assigned the first 15 words of the study guide. Starts with the word boorish, and it ends with the word poltroon. So you need to do those 15 words for Thursday, define them, and write a sentence with each. And today we're going to start, and probably not finish, but start the Friar's tale from the last tale we're going to do. It's possible that by the end of the week we'll get a review sheet, and maybe even next week take a test. We'll see. And there's that yellow stuff out there again. I see it. See it? It makes the whole weird. And the sky looks weird up there too. It's not gray, and it's kind of a bluish color. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, could be the end of the world. Sunshine and blue sky, something's not right. Let's enjoy it while we can. All right, so we're on page 292. If you notice, the questions are on the other side of the physician's tale. All right, so 292, you have questions. I'm going to read the background. I got confused, but turn just a minute before we read that. Let's see. Turn just a minute to. Sorry. All right. Turn to page 8 in the prologue. Would you turn there just a minute? Eight. Everybody on page 8? I just want to go back and show you. Here's the friar. It said there was a friar, a wanton one, and merry limiter, very festive fellow, and it goes on to say that he was kind of a con man. He kind of flirted with girls, may have had some girlfriends. He didn't help poor people. He went to rich people only. So this was the friar. There are other things we can say, but he was a con man. Okay? Now turn to page 20. So that's page 8. Turn to page 20. Here's the summoner. The summoner and the friar, I think, were companions. They were kind of together. They came together. But they hate each other. So I don't know why they came together. But the summoner was the guy that had the kind of the bad complexion. He ate garlic, onions, and leeks. They didn't, he drank wine, so he probably didn't smell well. The children were afraid of him. He also extorted money from people. We'll find out what that means in a minute. He was a con man, so he wasn't a very nice fellow. So these two guys had a lot in common. And so if you'll turn back to page 292, it says, our worthy limiter, now this is Chaucer speaking, our worthy limiter, the noble friar, kept glancing with a lowering sort of ire toward the summoner, but to keep polite, as yet he said no ugly word outright. So the friar and the summoner hate each other. At last he turned toward the wife of Bath. Madam, he said, God be about your path. You here have touched so many difficult rules, debated, I assure you, in the schools. Much you advanced was excellent, I say. But madam, as we ride along the way, we're only called upon to speak in a game. Let's have the authority. Let's leave the authorities in heaven's name to preachers and to schools for ordinands. But if it meets the company's demands, I'll talk about a summoner for a game. Lord knows, one can be certain from the name a summoner isn't much to be commended. I hope that none of you will be offended. So the way this is going to work is the friar doesn't like the summoner, so he's going to tell a story that makes all summoners look bad. So he's going to tell a story that kind of insults everybody who's a summoner. And then he goes on, he says, a summoner is one who runs about the nation dealing out summonses for fornication, is beaten up by every villager at the town's end. Now he's interrupted by the host. Now mind your manners, sir, our host called out, befitting your estate. In company we do not want to debate. You tell your tale and let the summoner be. So he's defending the summoner and says, Friar, don't insult the summoner. Just tell your story. But the summoner interrupts the host and says, nay, said the summoner, makes no odds to me. Say what he likes, and when my turn's to come, I'll pay him back, by God. I'll strike him dumb. I'll tell him what an honor it is, none higher, to be a limiter, a flattering friar. I'll tell him about the job of his. So the summoner says, don't worry about it, host. When I get a chance to tell my story, I'm going to tell a whopper about friars. I'll get him back. So the host says, let's have no more of this. Then turns to the friar. We prefer, he said, to hear your story, my dear sir. So why don't we start with Ben? All right, Ben, we're going to go kind of that way, and then that way, and then that way. So Ben, read about a paragraph or a stanza.
In my own district, once there used to be a fine one of high degree, who boldly did the execution due on fornication and witchcraft, bawdry, adultery, and defamation, breaches of wills and contracts, spoliation of church endowment, failure in the rent and tithes, and disregard of sacrament. All these and many other kinds of crimes that need to have no reversal at this time. Usury, simony too. But he could boast that lechery was what he punished most. They had to sing for it if they were taught like those who failed to pay the tithes they ought. As for all such, and if there was an informant, nothing could save them from the pecunial torment. For those whose tithes and offerings were small were made to sing a sad song of all. And here the bishop caught them with his crook, and they were all down in the archdeacon's book. And he had jurisdiction on inspection and powers to administer correction. He had a summoner ready to his hand. There was no slighter boy in all the land, for he had subtly formed a gang of spies who taught him where his profit might arise. And he would spare one lecher from his sword to teach the way to 24 more. Though it may drive him mad as a March hare, our summoner here, I will not spare his
Harlotries.
He has no jurisdiction on friars and cannot make infliction upon us now or ever, or take dues from friars, nor from the women of the stews. The summoner shouted, we have no control on either lot. The devil take your soul, called out the host. I say I won't have squalls. On with your story, sir. And if it galls, the summoner spare him not, my worthy master.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's answer a couple of questions there. I think we already answered number one, so make sure you write that down. Somebody want to remind us, what is the relationship between the friar and the summoner? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
they don't like each other.
I can't hear you.
They hate each other and they both tell stories about it.
Yeah, and they're both, well, later it says, what do they have? But they both are con men, they're both are lecherous, they're probably sexually immoral, they're both cheap people. So they're both bad guys.
Come on, guys.
All right, summarize the friar's description of the archdeacon. It said that he was a fine archdeacon, but there are two things that he particularly went after, and one was what they call it, fornication. That's sexual immorality. So one of the things the archdeacon particularly, the archdeacon is one who issues the summons. So he issues the summons and tells so-and-so to come to the church court to be tried for some charge. And that's the summoner's job, is to hand out the summons to the people that have to come to court, who've been charged with something. It says that he particularly goes after fornication and tithing. Do you know what tithing is?
You give
It's like
money.
an offering.
Okay, you give offering. Do you know what the word means?
10%.
Right. So if you were a millionaire, your tithe is 100,000.
Like a percentage.
It's 10%. So if you only have $100, how much do you pay?
10.
So you're not paying the same amount, but you are paying the same rate. So those were two things that he particularly went after, is fornication and tithing. Now we're going to look at the summoner, and we've read a little bit, Ben did, so we probably need to read more, so we'll go to Aiden. He gets interrupted again by the summoner, the friar. You can keep reading.
This treacherous thief, the friar said, was a pastor to certain ballots that ate out of his hand. Words for a hawk, none such in all the land. They told him all the secrets things they drew, from sinners their acquaintance was none new. Each was his agent, say, his private spy. Each drew large profits to himself thereby. Even the archdeacon didn't always know how much he got. He didn't have to show a warrant when he chose to make things hot for some obscure, uneducated sot. For he would summon under threat of curse, and they were glad enough to fill his purse, or give him banquets at the lamb and flag.
So we're trying to figure out who the summoner, what kind of person he was, and how he did his job. So, what's the first thing we learn about him? Said that he had some spies that would tell him all the secret things they drew from sinners. Their acquaintance was not new. Each was his agent, his private spy. So he had these spies that went around finding out what people did, particularly their sins. And so how would the summoner use that to make money? He would blackmail them. He'd say, I'm going to have to tell the archdeacon and he'll summon you to court. However, if you pay me $20, you're off the hook. So he would blackmail people. Another word for that is extortion. He would put pressure on people to give him money. All right, Libby, how about the next two?
When it says describe him, what should we put for that? It's talking about the summoner.
Yeah, I guess what we're saying, he's a blackmailer.
Like a cheater.
Yeah, which means he's dishonest. We don't really know anything here about what he looks like, except, well, we don't know much. We'll leave that blank. Okay, Libby?
Starting at the top of Tina,
Yeah, and just as Judas.
and just as Judas kept a little bag and was a thief, just as a thief he was. His master got no more than half the faith, to give the man his due and not to steal. He was a thief, a summoner, and a pimp, and he had wenches in his retinue. So when the Reverend Robert, or Sir Hugh, or Jack, or Ralph, whoever was, drew near and lay with them, they told it in his ear. He and these wenches made a gang at it. true adulterer paramour. Indeed, on the his whole attention went, because it was the source of all good.
All right, so we're still answering number 3, but we're also answering number 4. How did he use this gang, particularly the wenches or prostitutes? How did he use them? How did he to make money? Well, their clients would come, and then they would come to the Sumner and tell him who they did business with. And so, of course, these are people that don't want their name to be associated with prostitutes, so they say, I'll take care of that. You could get in big trouble if you'll pay me $200 or whatever the number is, and I'll keep my mouth shut. So that's how he made money. What kind of clients did he have? It says the Reverend Robert or Sir Hugh. What does that tell you about the clients? Yes.
They're like well known, or like they're like high class.
Sir Hugh would be a nobleman, and Reverend Robert is a pastor. I was telling the other class, I read something this weekend about somebody I really respected in the ministry. He had a radio ministry, and I listened to it for years, read a book by him. And he died a year ago, but apparently he was involved in something like that. And that was very disappointing. Some women had accused him, and the ministry denied it, he denied it, but it turned out to be true. But he died before any of this really came out. So, yeah, unfortunately, that's what sometimes happens. All right, so, all right, number 5, that's kind of where the story begins. So why don't we go to Daniel? So that was introduction to the actual story. It begins, so it befell on a certain day.
So it fell that on a certain day, the summoner rode forth to catch his prey. The poor old fiddle of the widow tribe, from whom on fang charge he hoped a bride. Now as he rode it, happened that he saw a gay young yeoman under a leafy shawl. He bore a bow with arrows bright and keen, and wore a light jacket of bright green, and had a black fringed hat upon his head. Hail, welcome, he well met, the summoner said. Welcome to you, and all good lads, said he, wither away under the greenwood tree. Pursued the yeoman, have you far to go? The summoner paused a moment and said no. Just here, close by. In fact, I'm only bent on going for a ride to raise a run. That's owing to my lord, a little fee. Why then you are bailiff? Why then you are a bailiff? Yes, he said he. He did not dare, for very filth and shame, say that he was a summoner for the name.
All right, so we are looking at number 5. So a yeoman, you remember what a yeoman is? He owns a small farm. Do you remember what the yeoman was like that we met in the prologue? He wore green, he had feathers, he had a bow and arrow, little green cat. Yeah, it's a Robin Hood. He's a forester. He lives and works out in the forest. So that's who this guy appears to be. And our summoner starts talking to him. And the guy, the yeoman, thinks that the summoner is a bailiff. So number 5, we have to define bailiff. Do you know what a bailiff is? You ever watch the People's Court or any of those shows? You ever seen any of that? You ever seen a courtroom in a movie or anything? Besides the jury and the attorneys and the judge and the witnesses and the accused and the people in the stands, there's always one other person in every courtroom.
Police?
Cop.
Right, what's he there for?
Keep everything under control, you know?
Say that again?
Keep everything under control.
Right, in Guilford County, we use sheriff's deputies. And on TV, there's always a sheriff's deputy. Usually, for some reason, the sheriff department does. It is the Guilford, it's not the Greensboro courtroom, it's the Guilford County courtroom. So, I guess that gives jurisdiction to the sheriff's department. But they're the only person in the room, the courtroom, with a gun. And if you've seen some videos, some crazy things can go on inside a courtroom. So you gotta have protection. But that's not what he does. Bailiffs also, I think, do deliver summons. So they have to have people, if you're called to court, other than jury duty, they do that by mail. They'll sometimes have to deliver it to you personally. Carter.
What do they have in common, the Yeoman and the Summoner?
We're about to find that out. Let's read the next one, and we can find that out, yeah.
So the definition of a bailiff would be, a person who keeps a courtroom under control.
Well, it's an officer, either sheriff's deputy or police officer, who is in the courtroom, but also in the Middle Ages, he's one who also took summonses. He would carry the summons, deliver the summonses. But a bailiff works for a royal court. A summoner works for the church court. So make sure you keep that distinction in mind. So we can answer what they have in common next after Charlotte, I guess, reads.
John, the Yeoman said, "Dear brother, you say you are a bailiff. I am another, but I am a stranger bound about this part. How beg acquaintance with you for a start, and brotherhood, if that is fair to offer. I have some gold and silver in my coffer. And should you chance to cross into our shire, all shall be yours as much as you desire." Marjorie the Summoner answered, "Thanks a lot." The pair of them shook hands upon the spot, swore to be brothers to their dying day, and chatting pleasantly rode on their way. The Summoner, always ready with a word as full of venom as a butcher bird, and sticking his nose into one thing or another, went on. "And where do you live at home, dear brother? I met him calling there some other day." The Yeoman said in his soft-spoken way, "Oh, far away up north. I'll tell you where. I hope that sometime I shall see you there. Before we part, I shall be so explicit about my brother, I'm sure you'll never miss it."
Thank you. So let's go back. What do the yeoman and summoner have in common? They are both bailiffs, or bailiff-like. Bailiffs work for the royal court, and they collect money and they deliver summons. Summoners work for the church court, and they do the same thing. So they're both in the same line of business, collecting money from people or sending summons. What do they swear to each other? They swear to be brothers. It says they swore on the spot to be brothers. Now, what does the word brother mean?
Like a bond.
Yeah, a close friend, a bond, because they're not bound. You don't swear to be somebody's brother if you have a brother, in your family. It's not something you swear to. But if you're not actual brothers, you're very close. So they're promising to be very close, like buddies. Now, there are some, I noticed the word, I'm going to say it because we have to say it. It's a precise word, damned. He says, "I'll be damned." The word damned, of course, means condemned, and particularly to hell. So it actually has a meaning other than some word, some cuss word that you might say. So if someone is damned to hell, that means they're condemned to hell. And notice he says that. The yeoman says that. He says, "I'll be damned." If you take it literally, it means to hell. I'm pointing that out because in a minute you're going to find out something about the yeoman that's going to be important.
Your house?
Hello. Did you say Sawyer? Yes.
It's like, sorry.
Alright, Thursday, don't forget the vocabulary.
Okay.
Alright, so we will, yes.
Can we enter 7? Because it is, she's available.
Not yet. We can't, cause we haven't read that far yet, so, who's next? It'd be Sawyer, but Sawyer's leaving, we're not gonna make
I
a
can
mistake.
read first.
We'll go to Luke. We'll come to Luke.
Hi, Sawyer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, are we a brother?
Yeah.
Brother the summer said,
Guys.
Listen up.
Just restart.
brother the summer said, I'd like to know if you can teach me something as we go, since you're a bailiff just the same as me, to tell me your subtler tricks. Now seriously, how can I win most money at this game, keep nothing back for consignments or from shame? Talk like a brother, how do you make out? Well, a great level brother, just about. I'll tell a truthful story, all in it, all. My wages are extremely tight and small. My master's hard and difficult. My job laborious, and with poor result, and so extortion that I live. I take whatever anyone will give. At any rate, by tricks and bounces. From year to year, I cover my expenses. I can't say better, speaking truthfully.
Okay, so we learn a lot about the yeoman here. First of all, he says he lives way up north, and he says, I hope that sometime I shall see you there. So he tells the summoner, I hope you'll come to visit where I live. And then the summoner says, could you teach me your tricks? Now, what kind of tricks do you think he's asking to learn? What kind? Exactly. How do you extort money? Because we can't make a lot of money doing our regular job, so we have to figure out how to make more money by cheating. And so he asked him, and then the yeoman says at the top of the page, there's not a particular question covering this, but you have to know this. The yeoman says he has a hard master. So the guy he works for is really hard-nosed, really tough. And so that's why he has to make money on the side by cheating, because he has to pay most of it to the master. So if you put all this together, he uses the expression, I'll be damned. They call each other brothers. He says he lives way up north. He says, I hope you come and visit me someday. And he says his master is really a tough, hard guy to work for. Now just keep all that in mind as we go to Carter, and the summoner responds to the yeah.
And so we're still not to,
We can't do number 7 yet.
Where are we?
Top of page 290.
Well,
The summoner said.
The summoner said, it's just the same with me. I'm ready to take anything God will, unless it is too heavy or too hot. What I can get out of a little chat in private, why should conscience boggle at that? Without extortion, how can we make a living? My little jokes are hardly worth forgiving. Bowels of pity, conscience I have none, plague on these penance fathers over time. We make a pair by God and by St. James. But brother, what do you say to swapping names? The summoner paused, the yeoman, and all the while the summoner spoke and had a little smile. Brother, he answered, would you have me tell, I'm a friend, my dwelling is in hell.
Now it says fiend. Just make sure it's not friend, but fiend.
I'm a fiend, my dwelling is in hell. I ride on business and have so far thrived by taking anything that I am given. That is the sum of all my revenue. You seem to have the same objective too. You're out for wealth, acquired no matter how. And so with me, I'll go right now. As far as the world's end of search is of
No, that's good. So we now know who the yeoman says it is, number 7. Who is it? Wait, you missed it. Daniel, you missed it. You were asking about it and you missed it.
Is he a fiend?
Yes, what else might you call him?
Is he a cheater? A cheater?
Yes, but you said he was a fiend. What's another, he lives in hell. What would you call fiends who live in hell? He's a demon. And so that puts everything he said when he said, I'll be damned, or when he said, you'll have to come visit me, when they said they were brothers. Now, what does that say about the summer?
That he's now in the.
Right, he just basically sold his soul to the devil.
You got your pain.
All right, so we go to Leroy. Lord said the summoner. And for some reason, the summoner is not surprised at all about this. He's not scared. He's not shocked.
So the believer,
what
there's this person modern day who like sold his soul to the devil.
I can't hear you, man.
There's like this person like in modern day who sold his soul to the devil.
Yeah, there are a lot of stories in different cultures about that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? How do you sell your soul to the devil, by the way?
They dedicate their life to worshiping Satan.
Yeah. I was listening to a guy yesterday who was saying, you remember when Jesus sent the pigs? Well, he met legion. They had a legion of devils in him, and he exhort. What do you call it? When you get a devil out?
Royal hogs.
Exorcism.
He exorcised the demons out of the man, and he put them in the pigs, and the pigs went down the hill. You remember that story?
Royal hogs.
You remember that, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the townspeople told Jesus to leave, and the Bible says he never went back. This is the point that he was making. He said, how do we sell our soul to the devil? If you ever tell Jesus no, like you're going to be, it's in terms of salvation. I just don't think I'm ready to be saved. I don't want to be saved. It could be the only opportunity you ever have. And in a sense, if you reject Jesus, you are selling your soul to the devil. There are only two choices, only two ways to go after you die. Even Jesus said the devil is the father of this world. And so you're either following the Lord God in heaven, the Father, or you're following the father of this world. So that's what this guy does. He rejects God and he sells his soul. But I think it's possible for us to do that by just rejecting Jesus. No, I'm not going to be saved. I don't want to do it. At least not now. Maybe I'll do it later when I get it all out of my system. That might be the only chance in your entire life that you ever have the desire to have Jesus. But anyway, I think it's a great question. So we are at Leroy. Lord said the Son.
Lord, said the summoner, what did I hear you say? I thought you were a yeoman, certainly of the body of a man like me, and have you then another shape as well, appointed for your high estate in hell. No, he replied, for hell admits of none, but when we like, we can appropriate one, or rather make you think we have a shape. Sometimes it's like a man, sometimes an ape, even an angel riding into bliss. There's nothing very wonderful in this. A lousy conjurer can trick your eye, and he, God knows, has far less power than I.
Okay, before you go on, would you like to read some more? You good?
I can read one.
All right, before you do that, he says, what kind of shape do you have? Looking at this guy, looks like a person, but he's not. He's a demon. He says, well, what kind of body do you have in hell? What's his answer?
Sometimes he's a woman, sometimes he's a man. And then,
In this world.
And then he's like he's an angel or something.
So what kind of bodies do angels have in heaven?
Bless you. Bless you.
with wings.
They have human bodies, right?
Well,
Like wings.
remember, they're really invisible. They're spirits.
Like
Now, you're right, we're given descriptions of angels in heaven that have wings. And so, but anyway, he says that in hell, demons don't have bodies. But he'll point out when we come to earth, we take on the bodies of people. And he'll explain that. It's kind of weird. Yeah, Leroy said he was going to read some more.
But why, pursued the summoner, track your game in various shapes? Why don't you stay the same? Just to appear, he said, in such a way as will enable us to snatch our prey. Why do you have to go to all this, brother? For very many reasons, my dear brother. You shall know all about it in good time. The day is short and it is long past prime, and yet I've taken nothing the whole day, and I must think of business, if I may. Rather than air my intellectual gift, besides you lack the brains to catch my drift. If I explained, you wouldn't understand. Yet since you ask why we're a busy band, it's thus at times we are God's instruments, a means of forwarding divine events, when he so pleases that concern his creatures, by various arts disguised by various features. We have no power without him, that's a fact, if it should please him to oppose some act. Sometimes at our request he gives us leave to hurt the body, though we may not grieve the soul. Take Job, his is case in point. At other times the two are not disjoined. That is to say, the body and the soul sometimes. We are allowed to take control over a man, put his soul to test, but not his body, all is for the best. For every time a man withstands temptation, it is a partial cause of his salvation. Though our intention is, when we beset him, that not that he should be saved, but we should get him. At times we slave for men without complaint, as on Archbishop Dunstan. Now a saint, why I was servant to the apostle.
All right, thank you. Look at number 9. What did he mean when he said sometimes we are God's instruments? They're demons. How could they be God's instruments? Don't they work for Satan? The angels work for God? But he said he was God's instruments. How do you explain that? Yeah.
Well, like a demon is obviously bad. So like if someone comes and tries to, if like a demon comes and tries to persuade someone to like turn to Satan, it could also help them do the opposite and like turn them to God because they don't want to be bad.
So it's kind of like a test, right? So sometimes God uses demons. I just kind of gave you a trick question. The demons work for Satan, right? Sort of, but who do they really work for? Who created them? There's nothing, Satan himself, who doesn't have to answer to God. Everything Satan does, everything any demon does, he has to do it by God's permission. God is in charge of everything. There's nothing in the universe that if it was created, God created it. And by the way the Bible puts it, it's really Jesus who created it. Now, Jesus is part of the Trinity, but in many ways the Bible refers to as Jesus was the means of creation. I think that when Jesus was hanging on a cross, who made the wood that he was hanging on? Jesus. The one hanging on the cross made the wood. He made the people that were crucifying him. You know, so I think it kind of should elevate your understanding of God. He says that we have no power without him. That's the key thing. Do you remember anything about Job in the Bible?
Oh, God tested him.
Right.
And they killed his wife and kids.
But who actually did he allow to do the testing? The devil. The Lord. Satan was talking to God, and he had a conversation. So we're gonna stop at the top of page 299. We've done down to 9. We need to pick it up at 10. So bring this with you tomorrow. And don't forget to do the vocabulary for Thursday.
Luke's ready for rhetoric.
Did you watch that American last night?
No.
I saw it. Today,